Hi everyone, I hope you're well. This video is going to go over assignment guidelines for your third essay, the third and final essay of the course, which is exciting. But I just want to clarify that the difference between the essays, because it being summer school and being so fast-paced that sometimes the weeks one essay is due, you get the guidelines at the same time for the next essay. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. But rhetorical analysis essay was essay 1, and that final draft was due June 6th. Persuasive essay is essay 2, and that final draft was due June 13th. And then what this video is going to go over is your third and final essay of the course. So this is brand new assignment guidelines, new topics you'll be having. Essay 3, final essay of the course, is the argument research essay. It's being submitted with the final portfolio. It's all one submission file. So if that gets technical, if you want me to clarify anything about that, let me know. But these guidelines are going to discuss that essay. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Just, in a regular semester, we have a little bit more time between these essays. So just want to make sure we're clear. So this is essay 3 we're talking about, argument research essay. You're just thinking about it this week. You're just kind of starting to plan an idea for a topic. It's the last essay of the course, so it's not due till the last week of classes for summer school. But it is a research essay, so you need a little bit more time with it. The argument research essay is very formal. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go into the PowerPoint. And if you want to download this PowerPoint when you work on the essay, I recommend it. So when you argue, it's still that same idea. You're trying to convince the audience to think about something differently. But with this essay, with the argument research essay, arguments can be complex because the topics for these essays are difficult. They're more in-depth. And why is it hard to change someone's mind? Changing someone's mind is a difficult challenge because someone's morals, ethics, their value system, maybe even general upbringings are deeply rooted in their mindset. So getting somebody to change their opinion about something that they hold a strong connection to or that they care about is very difficult. And also you just want to respect different viewpoints, different sides to an argument. If your goal is to change the audience's mind, you aren't listening to what they have to say, and that's not good for your credibility. So you have a different goal with the argument research essay. The goal of the argument research essay is not to change the audience's mind about the topic. The goal is to reach common ground. It's to bridge these perspectives into one universal middle ground. So you might be thinking, let me download this. You might be thinking, how might I reach common ground? What is common ground? Because your credibility, your ethos as a writer, as a communicator must be considered, a specific structure to your argument needs to be followed. So make sure you carefully read the readings about Rogerian versus Aristotelian style arguments, because this essay, the argument research essay, will use the Rogerian style of argumentation. And the reason why is because that's the goal of Rogerian style arguments. It's to reach common ground. So it helps you organize your thoughts a little bit, and it gives your argument a formal structure to follow. It helps you find sources to validate your argument. It allows you to respect others by validating that their perspectives are also worthy of discussion and consideration. And it helps you practice how to reach common ground with complex topics. So the Rogerian style of argument, like I said, make sure you carefully review the reading about the Rogerian style argument, and you'll find that there is a particular structure to it. You have an introduction. You have acknowledgement to the opposing side, so I'll talk about that briefly in just a second about what that means. You have your argument, so if you notice, your argument gets pushed down a little bit because you establish respect, authority, and trust first by respecting different viewpoints than your own. Then you dedicate enough time to your argument. Then you reach the middle ground, and then you have a conclusion. So I'm going to discuss each of these in a little bit more detail. And I also have a sample that I'm going to be referring to so that I'm a visual learner. I like to have something concrete to compare. So I hope this helps. So the introduction is brief. Before I talk about that, I want to remind you that your topics for this essay should be something that you know enough about to discuss in your own words, especially for the introduction paragraph. So you don't want to choose a topic where you feel you have to constantly search on Google or read articles or books about the topic just to learn the general information and background about it. You want to boost your ethos, your knowledge in the subject by writing the introduction off the top of your head, meaning you don't use any sources, no sources in the introduction paragraph. You're going to use sources in this essay, but not in the introduction. The introduction is one paragraph, so 5 sentences or more is a formal paragraph, and it should include just that, we call it background context. And what that is what's your topic? What's the background information on it? You know, who's impacted by it, or where does it occur, or what's the history, the dates of it, just little brief information. You don't have to get too detailed. When you summarize the main idea of something, you take the main idea. You don't focus on the concrete details. But you want to choose a topic that you're confident in discussing in your own words in the introduction. And something that you want to learn about too, so they don't get too bored. So you want to be kind of in the middle in understanding the topic, being aware and knowledgeable in your topic. You don't want to end there because that sounds like an informative research essay, but this is an argument. So you want a thesis statement, again, that's 1 sentence, but the thesis statement for these essays are so important. They discuss how the thesis statement should discuss how the different perspectives can come to an agreement with this topic. So what I mean by that is the thesis statement should be your middle ground. So I actually recommend that you don't write the thesis statement until you're done with the essay, so that when you complete the middle ground paragraph, you can read it and write a sentence about it, and that's your thesis statement. Now that's entirely up to you, but that's the way I would approach it. Now let me show you a sample so we can kind of compare. And since this is a sample, try not to choose this topic. If you're absolutely passionate about this topic, just speak to me to make sure that we don't write about the same thing. But again, you want your topic to be something that you have a general understanding about, but that you want to learn more too. So I personally, I'm against standardized testing in public education. So if I was going to write an essay or that argued against standardized testing, this is how I would structure it in the Rogerian style that's required. So in my introduction paragraph, first, I want to assume my audience does not know what standardized testing is. Maybe they never heard of it. Maybe they're from different states, have different, expectations for standardized testing, different generations. They had changed through time. So I would just explain first what it is and where it happens, where it occurs, what grades, public schools, things like that, what types of schools. Then I'd share, that there is an argument around this, because I want to inform the audience that, hey, if you don't know about it, there's an argument going on about it. That I'd talk about how some think it's an important measurement of progress for students, but others argue that it perhaps puts too much stress on students and educators. So that's just me kind of introducing that there's different conversations going on about this topic. But I can't end there, right? Because that sounds more like an informative research essay. So I want to close on a thesis that states my middle ground, how I think these different perspectives can come to an agreement about standardized testing. And that would be my thesis statement. So I'll go back to that thesis statement in just a second. But to summarize, that would be my introduction paragraph, should I have chosen that as my topic. The next paragraph is called the acknowledgement to the opposing side, because remember, you want to share respect on different perspectives than your own about the topic. So before you share your argument, your opinion, your perspective, you need to gain credibility and respect by writing about alternative perspectives first. So this paragraph, again, at least 5 sentences or more, should share what opposing viewpoints are against your own side. Depending on topics, you can focus on just one perspective and share what that is, or that if there's more than one, you can write what the different ones are. It really depends on your topic. Some topics are pro-con, so you talk about the con or you talk about the pro, whatever side you're taking, you write the opposite here. Or if it's not so divided, just share a different perspective than your own argument here. That way the audience learns, and if they're against what your perspective is, they have gained respect for you because you shared their perspective. Write about at least one alternative perspective. Just a reminder in this essay throughout, do not write about your own personal experiences. That doesn't count as a source because it's a formal research essay. You need to validate with published sources and information instead of personal experience. So just keep that in mind. Normally, you would find a source to validate the opposing side, but with the interest of time and since it's summer school, you don't need a source in this paragraph. I just want you to share what a different perspective is about your topic. So if we go to my acknowledgement, if I'm against standardized testing, I wouldn't write why standardized testing is negative here. I would write about the positives it brings. I don't agree to that, but I need to show that I'm a respectable communicator and that I could structure a formal argument. It's tough, especially if it's a topic that you're passionate about when you write about something that you don't agree with, but it's fair. It's a way to put yourselves in somebody else's shoes. So maybe I'd say different perspectives, so that standardized testing allows districts to evaluate students' success. It provides funding for schools, and it lets students advance in their core subjects. So those are different perspectives that I'm sharing on why they are valid in the education world. So that would be the opposing side paragraph. Then the most exciting part, what you've been waiting for, the argument, your argument. This section will discuss your own perspective, your own argument. And it needs to be at least 3 paragraphs because it's your side to the argument. So it should cover the following. What is your viewpoint about this topic? Be formal here. You still want to be respectable. Don't use words such as my argument is right. The other sides, or those who disagree with this side, are dumb and wrong. Obviously, that word obviously is a little sarcastic and informal. Obviously, this is the only answer. You avoid phrases like that. You also want to write in third person point of view only. As tempting as it is, avoid first person, meaning I, me, and our, and definitely avoid second person, you and your, those words. And then you're thinking maybe why? It's my argument. Why can't I use first person? But you want a formal tone. And plus, you're not writing about personal experiences at all in this essay. Even if it's something you've gone through, you still are not putting yourself as the experience. You're relying on sources to validate your argument, not personal experience. You also want to avoid you because it points to the audience directly and it's informal. Defend your argument by using at least 3 sources in this section of paragraphs, in the argument paragraphs. 3 sources at least or more. Why? Because you need to validate your argument. So this is the only place in the essay where your sources will be used. So if we think about the sample, my argument paragraphs, I would write at least 3 paragraphs. I'm against standardized testing, so this is why. And I would explain why. Something I came up with, they stress students out. They make teachers teach the test. They lack they're not able to creatively teach and structure the courses how they want. And it causes the arts to suffer because funding and focus only goes to the core subjects instead of the creative outlets that schools and students and teachers combined need. So just remember that this is the only part of the essay where you would find sources to validate your topic, your argument. I recommend, since you need at least 3 paragraphs, I recommend 3 reasons that support your argument like I did here. So if you're outlining the essay on your own time, I would come up with 3 different reasons that support your argument, because then you could find a source for each one of these and use one source in each paragraph. That's how I would recommend it. That way you have clear topic sentences too that guide each part to your argument. So I find a source that proves why they stress students out, why teaching to the test is negative for pedagogy and education combined, and why the arts suffer. That's what I would recommend for this part of the essay. So after your argument, you need to get to the most important part of the actual Rogerian structure. Now that you've presented your topic, you've discussed alternative perspectives, and you've discussed your own argument, you now need to say, this is how we all need to come together, because everybody's arguing, so how can we bridge these gaps and come together in the future for this? So this is called the middle ground. The middle ground should be at least one paragraph, and it should discuss the following. What is valid about those alternative perspectives that you wrote about? What is valid about your perspective? And what is the future outlook? Meaning, how can all these perspectives come to an agreement? This is just your suggestion. So that's the cool thing about the middle ground paragraph. Don't use any sources here in this paragraph. You just need to discuss, if you were in complete control about this topic, how would you get these perspectives to agree? And that's your own opinion. There's no right or wrong. And let's hop over to my middle ground. Again, it's your own approach. It's your own opinion here. Think about what you wrote in the acknowledgement. Think about what you wrote in the argument sections of this essay. Can you bring all these together? How can I get people who are in favor of standardized testing and people who are against standardized testing to bridge that gap and help education in the future and currently? If you want to pause the video, I won't read this word for word since you have it here and you can pause the video, but this is what my middle ground paragraph would be. Basically, to summarize, I'd say that, you know what, if we need to evaluate something, if the districts need something to measure or they need something to evaluate the students on, why don't we evaluate what their strong skills are? Meaning, if a student is interested in art, then evaluate their art projects. If a student is good in math, evaluate their understanding of algebra and any other type of geometry or trigonometry subjects. Or if a student excels in, or if they have other types of skills as well. And the reason why is because through those skills, maybe the test could provide career opportunities based on the scores they received. If students are interested in trade work, they can take career aptitude tests further to focus on what trades they are willing and could be strong in. That way, students aren't pressured in fitting a mold, meaning they're not evaluated based on their, quote, competencies. And instead of getting a low score, instead they're measured by their aptitude. And their focus is on the strengths instead of the weaknesses. And then after I wrote this paragraph, I read it, and I need a thesis. So your thesis is in the introduction, but it's this paragraph that creates the thesis. So maybe something like, to satisfy all perspectives, schools should evaluate student success while also avoiding rigid testing structures through a type of test that focuses on student strengths instead. Something like that. Probably could come up with a better thesis, but it's a middle ground. So that thesis would go in the introduction. And that's why the thesis is so important, because it reaches that goal of creating the middle ground. Conclusion kind of just wraps the essay up, but mainly just brings that future outlook of the middle ground into perspective. Conclusion, one paragraph. You don't want any sources in here. Don't use any sources. Just what is the benefit of these perspectives? Meaning, why is the common ground that you just wrote about in the previous paragraph so important? Basically, it's called the so what. Why does this matter? Why does coming to an agreement? Why should they come to an agreement instead of being divided? It's your own opinion. And if I was writing about this, I'd maybe say that, future testing, it helps the school budget. But students, instead of being stressed about passing a test and moving on to the next grade, they are celebrated about all the skills that they have, and maybe helps them brainstorm for their future with career choices, college choices, trade school choices, or just immediate work choices after high school, and understand those strengths, and maybe just jumpstart into other courses as well that they could take And they grow in confidence because it's an aptitude test. It's not a passing exam. That's just me saying why I think this is so important. So again, your conclusion is your own opinion. And that's the essay. So thinking about the required format, it's the Rogerian style. So you want to make sure you have when you work on this essay, have this PowerPoint with you, because you want to have it as a checklist to make sure you have everything that's required. Use topic sentences that start each paragraph. Let the audience know what the paragraph will focus on. You need at least 3 sources. They all go in your argument section, your argument. They can be any of the following. You can do a variety of them or just all of the same type of source. It's up to you, but 3 different sources. Newspaper articles, magazine articles, books, documentaries. No websites unless they're .gov, .org, .edu, and .net. There's review the files on sources and source credibility. The reason you want to mainly avoid .coms is because a lot of blogs are .coms, and the conventions of blog genres are that the author is allowed to share their own opinion, and you don't have to research anything when you write a blog. It's opinionated, and that's it. It's like a journal almost. So, and that's okay because that's the expectation of the blog. You can't use that as a source because the author didn't do research on their topic. And again, make sure you take the time to review those understanding source type files as well. And if I can clarify anything, just let me know. And then, like I said, all 3 sources go in the argument section because you need to validate your argument with sources. So, APA format, you need to make sure every time you use a source that you have an in-text citation to give credit to the source whenever it's being used. You also need a reference page that lists the format of that source and correct APA format. Make sure that you review those APA files. Those are so important when you're working on it. And APA is very technical, so don't hesitate to email me or meet with me on Zoom to go over that in more detail. But just remember that this is a research essay, so if there are no in-text citations, it's an automatic failing grade. And if it lacks a reference page as well, it's a failing grade because it's a research report. So you always want to give credit when you're using these sources in the essay. Otherwise, I won't know that you used a source, your audience doesn't know, and you lose that credibility. And as well as having a reference page. They go together. You need both. And standard, 700 words or more. That's not counting that title page or reference page. Make sure that you write in third-person point of view. So if you'd want to avoid first, meaning I believe, my argument, I found, I believe the syllabus is stressful because you, make sure you definitely avoid you. Second person, that's you and your. It loses the formality of the essay tone. And you don't want to call the audience out. You're not directing them to do anything. You're just sharing the perspectives. And third person is correct. Students, they, them, people, society, anything, they, them, it, anything like that is third person perspective. So thinking about common concerns when writing a research paper, if you're asking yourself, am I relying too much on my sources? You probably need to choose a topic that you have more confidence in writing about in your own words. Am I relying too little on my sources? Then that means that you need to incorporate them more in the essay and maybe choose a topic that won't bore you, that you know you want to learn a little bit more about. So that helps you avoid plagiarism. What you should cite is an author's theory that they coined and created themselves. Any type of research, whenever a source mentions a study, it's great information to use in your paper and must be cited. Any types of studies that are similar to research, if you use the information from a source about a study, it must be cited. Ideas the author of the source has, their own ideas that further the discussion. Of course, make sure they're credible, meaning they found research to support those ideas instead of a blog where they just share their opinion and that's it. Information you conduct I don't recommend primary research right now because with the interest of time, it takes a lot of time. That's where you become the researcher and you maybe interview or survey people in relation to your topic. And you can use that data, but you need to cite yourself because as silly as it sounds, you would be plagiarizing yourself if you don't give credit. If you want to know more about primary research, feel free to reach out to me, but I would only focus on secondary sources. And again, that's information that's already published and has already been researched that you didn't create, somebody else did. And these are all secondary sources. What you don't need to cite: common knowledge. If it's on more than a billion sources and websites have it, that you don't need to cite it. What I mean by that is the sky is blue, broccoli is a vegetable, Thursday before Friday. Those are all facts. They're true. It's been proven. You don't need to cite that. History, meaning a real event that occurred, that doesn't discuss data, research, or theory. It doesn't need to be cited. You know, for example, the year of something, the location of a place, or when an event occurred. When you should cite it is if you found a statistical number or data with that information, because that means people conducted research to get that number, to get that statistic. For example, census data about a city or county, state or country or global. Population information, that was research that was conducted, so it needs to be cited. So if you have any questions about this essay, do not hesitate to reach out to me. It's technical, and that's a good thing because it follows that strict format of the Rogerian style, but it can also be tricky. So if you have questions about it, let me know. It's worth 150 points. So it's very important. It's your last essay of the course. These guidelines highlight that the PowerPoint went over. And then the grading rubrics here. The only other thing I want to add, because again, I understand if with the interest of time, if anything gets confusing, you're submitting this third essay, the argument research essay, with the portfolio. The final portfolio is a requirement for students in English 1110 to complete. It's a requirement of the department. So the portfolio is 200 points total because that's including the argument research essay that we just went over right now. Okay, so the portfolio has a few requirements too. So the cover letter of the portfolio is that's what page 1 is. It's a cover letter, and that's worth 50 points. Then on page 2, you're going to start with the title page, your argument research essay that we just went over. That's why it's ungraded, because by the time you submit it, it hasn't been graded yet. It's the first time you're submitting. It's the final draft. And that starts on page 2, and that's the 150 points that we just talked about in the previous assignment guidelines. So 50 plus 150 is 200. So that's why these all go together. And then whatever page this argument research essay ends on, start a new page. And I want you also to include the final drafts of your essay 1 that you did in the course, the rhetorical analysis that was submitted June 6th. And essay 2, the persuasive essay that's submitted June 13th. You can download the ones that you submitted on Canvas already, or if you still have them saved on your computer, just download it, copy and paste them, and put them in this portfolio. It's a portfolio for a reason, because a portfolio is a collection of your work. So it's basically everything you've done in the class with the addition of this new third essay. So don't forget that essay, by the way. That's important. So the final portfolio is due, and that's when the argument research essay is due with it. You're submitting all of these into one file together. Final portfolio is due June 29th. We have to be strict with that because grades are due shortly after. So like I said, page 1 of this portfolio is the cover letter. It's worth 50 points. All I want you to do is answer these 5 questions in 150 words or more total. For everything. It's 150 words total or more. Answer these questions. It's a way to reflect on your journey in the past year, and also just in this brief little course that we had that's been super awesome and exciting to learn from you all. And I hope that you have grown your strengths that you've already had in the course. And then these are just the requirements for the page 1 cover letter. It should fit all on one page, which is good as well. It's 50 points, and here's the grading rubric for it. And then just a reminder that page 2 is that argument research essay that this video has gone over. And that's the remainder of the 200 points, 150 points for this. And those assignment guidelines you can find on this page right here. And then whatever page this argument research essay ends on, after your reference page for it, create a new page, put essay 1 and 2 in the portfolio as well, since it's a collection of all your work. So again, I understand if you all have any questions, since we're moving super fast, but this file is super important, and let me know if you have any questions about what's coming up, and I'm really excited to listen to what topic ideas you're going to have for this argument research essay. So keep me posted on it, and y'all take care.